Right now, let's get back to the table, where journalist Patrick Lohman is speaking with two survivors of the Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon fire. That's Kate Peck and Yolanda Cruz. They watched more than 500 square miles of the landscape they love go up in flames after the federal government blew 2 prescribed burns in 2022, leading to the largest wildfire in New Mexico history. As of March 6th, FEMA had paid about 11% of a nearly $4 billion fund to compensate victims. That number is continuing to rise, and FEMA notes that those payouts account for 68% of all claims submitted with documentation. But attorneys representing more than 1,000 claimants have filed at least 14 separate lawsuits against FEMA. They allege the agency has missed legal deadlines to provide payment offers and that it's refusing to pay for intangible losses and emotional harms those northern New Mexico communities suffered, they say, in violation of federal law. FEMA is challenging that contention in court. Meanwhile, on the ground, community groups are calling on the agency to replace the claims office director with someone who understands New Mexico better. Here's Pat with Yolanda and Kate for part 2 of their conversation.
Thanks, Lou. Kate, FEMA announced in mid-January it was, quote, consolidating, end quote, its disaster response across New Mexico. And as part of that, reassigning the former director of the claims office. Who do you hope takes over the so-called joint recovery office?
Well, from everything that I have seen in similar cases have usually gone through the courts because it's an electric company or something like that. And there has been a request from the very beginning, after the legislature passed these funds, to use a retired judge, someone who is accustomed to how you distribute money compensating people for damages. And I know there have been groups that have submitted lists of qualified retired judges here within the state. I also think that we put in a request during the public comment period to have local people represented, and they have hired local people. But as Yolanda pointed out, they're not in decision-making positions. My hope would be that they select a retired judge who is experienced in this sort of thing. I know I did a little reading about how the PG&E in California, that huge fire when the electric company took responsibility for it. The timeline, once it was adjudicated and then put into place, went fairly quickly. It was a very good system, but it was done because it was headed by a retired judge who knows the system. So I don't know why FEMA felt like they needed to, they've kind of, I think, largely organized their response against what they've used with the Stafford Act, the way FEMA normally distributes or works with, disaster after a big fire, distributing Stafford Act funds. But again, that means that in this case, even though it was at fault of the federal government, that same thinking of people have to prove that they deserve it based on whatever FEMA wants to demand, that's been in place. That was inappropriate. That was entirely inappropriate. It continues to be, and a lot of people suffer because of it.
Just given what you were saying about, what you see as the culture of FEMA, about making people prove their losses, do you think one person, even if it is a former judge from New Mexico who knows New Mexico law and culture, can make a difference in the direction of the office? Do you think it can really be one person?
I think it can.
Yeah.
I don't think that because we're so far along in the process, I don't know that it could be a total solution. Mm-hmm. But you know what? Anything's better than what we've experienced, especially for those who are devastated. People who are living with family or living in trailers. The long-range planning group, I remember at one time, I was on that committee for a while, and I left after one specific case that still troubles me. It was being FEMA advised. It wasn't a FEMA committee, but it was being FEMA advised. And I saw the paperwork, FEMA wanting to use some of the same criteria to determine if people get help as if it were actually FEMA money. And there was a gentleman that needed $500 to build an outhouse because his family was living in tents. And my response was, give him the money. Forget all the paperwork they wanted. This man, they're living in tents, give him the money. And that was easy to prove. You go look. That's a 30-minute drive and a look and see that, okay, they need it. Give them the money. So I don't know if I answered that. Yes, I think it's making a difference. I don't think it'll be a total solution.
Yeah, thank you. Yolanda, I understand you had some concerns about the way the claims office advertised the new director of this office. What about the process set off alarm bells for you?
What set off alarm bells was that it was only advertised for 7 days. You know, usually when there's a job opening, people really need to get that out widely. There's also a need to look at your resume and update it and kind of tailor it to the position that's open and your letter of interest. And so to me, 7 days is very minimal time for that. I know that there is no standard time, but it is very minimal.
Yeah, and we reached out to FEMA, and just for what it's worth, they said that this was an emergent position that needed to be hired quickly, and that they shared it widely with state officials and on their Facebook page. I wanted to ask you about Facebook. You're the moderator of a Facebook group that has about 13,000 members, last I checked, maybe more. Many of them are fire survivors. I just was hoping you could kind of take the pulse of that group, of that community for a minute, and tell me what changes you're seeing, over the long course of this disaster. Like what has changed, and ultimately, are people getting more frustrated, less frustrated? What would you say about the long view of that?
So there was a lot of anger at the beginning, which is understandable because the federal government should have known better. Everyone who lives in the area knows you don't light fires on windy days. You don't light fires in dry conditions. And so there's been a lot of anger over the course of the fire. And when FEMA first came in, the most that they were not the most, but at first what they were helping with was about $500. Sometimes it was a little over that if they could see that, there was something more that needed to happen. But $500 to somebody who's had substantial damages is nothing. And when you're hearing from elected officials, from the president down, don't worry, the government will take care of this, you'll be fully compensated. And that's what the expectation was. And even people who were donating to the survivors thought, oh, there's not a need now because the government is doing this. And so there was a lot of re-education that needed to happen to say the government is not taking care of this right now. There's a long time before we will see anything. Now there's a lot of people who have withdrawn their claims from FEMA because they're being almost audited, right? When you're asked to bring in receipts that you may not have, tax returns from 3 years. If you don't have receipts, you're asked to bring in bank statements and credit card bills. And it just is really traumatic for people who have experienced so much trauma already. To be felt like you're being called a liar and a thief and a cheat each time that you're interacting with the office. And again, this is the policies that they've enacted. And so there's a lot of anger. There are people who've just thrown in the towel. Wow. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think that people who can afford to wait it out will wait it out, and those that can't will probably leave the county. We've been losing population now for over 10 years, and many people are deeply rooted in the communities. And it's tough. It's tough to be there with so much destruction, but it's even worse when you're not getting the help that was promised.
Yeah. Speaking of, Kate, you recently attended yet another funeral for a fire survivor, Ray Herrera, who died before being able to return home.
Yes.
I spoke to him a few times myself, and I know he was getting very frustrated. Like he once told me that, quote, FEMA wouldn't know how to pour water out of a boot, even with instructions written on the heel.
That's right.
Did you hear that one?
No, that sounds like right.
And so this is the second funeral you've personally attended, maybe more, of someone who's unable to, actively trying to rebuild, who's unable to move back home. What has this prolonged recovery done to the community you love?
It's shown the depth of the hurt. It's shown that the people, no matter what the situation is, in general, the people make good decisions. One of the things that I have been frustrated hearing from FEMA, and I don't put up with it anymore, is the condescending attitude towards the people. People more in San Miguel County, in that little piece of Taos that burned, they are not stupid people, but they're being treated like they are. But I think I want to point out, it's disheartening. You know, a lot of the services that are provided are mental health that come through. But I want to point something out, because our community has not waited for FEMA to get off its posterior. There are things happening. There's a group called Neighbors Helping Neighbors. I remember the day it formed. It was in that shelter the first night after big evacuations. And it was chaos. People were bringing stuff in. People were coming in. It was chaos. I saw a group of maybe 5 women stand in a circle, talk about what was needed, and within an hour they created order. Yeah. That's the local people with no preparation whatsoever. And then that organization, it became Neighbors Helping Neighbors, which continues to this day to serve the people. They now are advocates that, you know, there's philanthropic funds that haven't been widely dispersed yet. But because of Neighbors Helping Neighbors creating an advocacy program, now people are I got some help from them to put in a slab so I can take a travel trailer out to my property. And so people can go to Neighbors Helping Neighbors, and you're going to get help quickly. They still make a case for it. They have to show that this is what is needed and why, but it's happening. I know I work with a group called Collaborative Visions in Mora County, which is trying to work on creating long-term solutions. There's an innovative project that started called Plaza Nueva, that amongst other things is going to eventually replace the plaza that Mora lost in 1847 in the Second Battle of Mora. The local people, we don't need FEMA to tell us what to do. We need FEMA to disperse money that has been designated by the legislature, by the president, to help people regain their lives again. They don't need to be telling us what to do.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I just was hoping that we could end this with you both taking about a minute to describe, if you ever allowed yourself a vision of a fully compensated, a fully restored community, just what you picture when you think about a community that's fully compensated for this terrible mistake. We can start with you, Kate.
These people, the norteños, the people, whatever Hispanic, indigenous, Anglo, there's a long history of being resilient. We're not going to be the same. But I do believe firmly that the people of this community, because of their grit, their determination, their intelligence, we're going to build back. I did some consulting in Puerto Rico, and I love their slogan, "Build Back Better." And I think there's going to be some people that have to give up. There's going to be some people who aren't going to live to see it. But we're going to build back better. It better be with FEMA, and it better be with the funds that have been designated to help. But we'll be back.
Glad to hear it. Yolanda, do you want to share your vision for what it could look like? Yeah.
The beauty of the area will always be scarred by this fire, but the beauty also exists in the people who are there. And there are so many efforts, including our local colleges and different community groups, as Kate mentioned, that are looking at economic development. You know, how do we change things? How do we bring in more skills? The FEMA contracts that will be awarded to help rebuild, a lot of the smaller contractors don't have what's needed, the licensing or maybe insurance or other things, bookkeepers, things like that are needed. So they're trying to help now build that capacity. So I believe that the community is coming together and will find ways to bring more strength and look at what opportunities may exist and just be a stronger community because of that.
All right, well, thank you so much for all of your time and your expertise. It's been invaluable to me as I've reported on this issue, and as you can expect, I'll call you both again soon. So,
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
thank you.